Hello and thank you for joining for tonight's dark and scary stories. In the comments, let us know where you are listening from and if there are cryptids you would like me to make some stories on. Now for tonight's dark and scary stories, I hope you all enjoy. The Thing in the Trestles. A horror novel. Tape recording 1, 911 dispatch time, 11:47 p.m. October 3, 1973 location, Enfield, Illinois. Static, heavy breathing, the sound of gravel crunching underfoot. Dispatcher, 911, what is your emergency? Henry McDaniel, voice trembling its back, the thing on the tracks, it's laughing at me. Dispatcher, sir, I need you to calm down. What is your location? Henry, sound of wet dragging, you don't understand. 30 years. 30 years I kept the bargain. Pained breathing, it's hungry again. Dispatcher, sir, are you injured? Henry, hysterical laughter, it's inviting me. It remembers. It says Henry Jr. tastes sweet, it says. Gravel disturbed by something massive. Wet breathing. Henry screaming, no, stay away from the house. I said I'd feed it. 4 gunshots, silence. Dragging sound grows louder. Wet touch on receiver. Child's voice distant. Thank you for the meal, Henry. Line dead. Chapter 1, Gas Station Blues. The fluorescent lights buzzed like dying insects. Lacey McDaniel had worked the night shift at Carl's Gas and Grab for 8 months. She knew every flicker, every creak, every scent. Stale coffee, motor oil, and something metallic underneath that rose from the floorboards after midnight. She sat behind the register, phone propped against beef jerky, listening to Cryptid Chronicles. The host was deep-diving the Enfield incident of 1973. Henry McDaniel was the victim of a conspiracy, the host intoned. But records show Henry had a history of mental illness. Lacey stabbed at her phone. The conspiracy theorists always got details wrong. The skeptics got them wrong too. Her grandfather hadn't dragged himself anywhere. The report said he'd been dragged by something before someone changed unknown assailant to post-mortem animal activity. The door chime dinged. Lacey looked up. Empty. The door swayed in the October breeze, but the threshold was clear. She walked to the door, peering out. 2 pumps, both empty. The highway was dark, the nearest streetlight flickering. Beyond that, the railroad tracks cut through town, the old trestle silhouetted against a moonless sky. She saw footprints. They started at the parking lot's edge, 6 stowed impressions, each 14 inches long, pressed deep into wet earth. They led to the door, stopped at the entrance mat, then turned back, with drag marks between each print. Lacey stepped outside, her flashlight illuminating the tracks. The prints showed texture of skin, whorls of fingerprints spiraling inward toward centers that shifted when she looked directly. The tracks led toward the tracks, toward the trestle. Her phone buzzed, she screamed. Text from Ricky, hey you there, I am running late. Lacey exhaled, just a coyote with mange. The imagination did funny things at 2 a.m. She went inside, grabbed a wet floor sign, placed it over the tracks. Not that anyone would see it. Enfield had 847 residents, most asleep. She settled back and tried homework, online classes, trying to earn credits to transfer somewhere, anywhere else. The fluorescent lights buzzed. Outside, something like a woman crying echoed across the parking lot. When Lacey looked up, there was only wind. She checked the security cameras. On screen 2, aimed at the back, she saw movement. Something stood by the dumpster, too tall, 7 feet, bent at a wrong angle. In infrared, it looked gray, featureless, except for 3 points of light where eyes should be. The figure flowed liquidrong, unfolding from its crouch. For a moment, Lacey saw a mouth opening too wide, filled with too many teeth in concentric circles like a lamprey's maw. Static, the camera died. Lacey stood, 911 already typed, thumb hovering. But what would she say? There's a tall gray thing by the dumpster. She was her grandfather's granddaughter. Crazy runs in the family. She called Ricky. Voicemail again, voicemail. Ricky, it's Lacey. Something's weird, call me back. She stared at the screens. The other cameras showed empty areas, front door, register, coolers. Just the back camera, dead black. She grabbed Carl's baseball bat and walked to the back door. Locked, deadbolted, chain in place. She pressed her ear against the metal. Silence. Then wet leather peeling off meat. Heavy breathing from multiple throats slightly out of sync, whispering her name. Lacey, Lacey, we remember Henry, we remember the bargain. She stumbled back, hand over her mouth. The bat clattered, the whispering stopped. Through the window she saw the wet floor sign was gone. In its place, arranged in mud, 6 piles of white, gleaming objects. Bones, small bones, children's bones. Lacey ran. She grabbed keys, jacket, phone, and fled out the front door, not looking back, not stopping until she was in her car with doors locked and engine running. She should call Sheriff Doherty, but she heard his voice already. Lacey, honey, you know your family's history. You don't want people thinking you're like him, do you? She pulled out and drove home, checking her mirror every few seconds. Nothing followed. Her apartment was above Mrs. Patterson's yarn shop, cramped 1 bedroom with water stains. Lacey locked the door, wedged a chair under the knob, sat with all lights on until dawn. She must have dozed because her phone buzzed with a text from Carl. Where are you? Ricky didn't show, and the morning guy says the back door is hanging open. Lacey stared. She'd locked that door, checked it twice. She called Ricky again. Voicemail. She called his mother. No answer. She drove to his house and found his truck in the driveway, keys still in ignition, driver's door open. Sheriff Doherty arrived 20 minutes later. Walk me through it, he said, pen hovering over blank paper. I saw something on the security camera, by the dumpster. I got scared and left. Something by the dumpster. A person, maybe. The camera died. And these tracks you mentioned. Gone, they were bones, small ones like from a bird. Doherty exchanged looks with his deputy. Lacey, I went by the station. No bones, no tracks, back door was open, latch is broken. Ricky has a history of drug problems, takes off sometimes. He was coming to work. Then where is he? Doherty's voice was gentle, patronizing. Lacey, I know your grandfather's death affected you, but you can't go around seeing monsters. They found Ricky 3 days later on the railroad tracks, 2 miles east, laid out on rusted steel like an offering. His clothes folded neatly beside him. His body positioned, arms at sides, face turned up. No blood, no visible trauma, just Ricky naked and dead, mouth open in a perfect circle, eyes milky white, skin wrinkled like he'd been submerged for weeks. Autopsy said heart attack, closed casket. Lacey didn't go. She spent those 3 days in her grandfather's attic. The McDaniel house had been empty since her father's death, cancer that consumed him in months. Lacey had the key, paid taxes, kept the lawn mowed. She'd never faced the room where Henry McDaniel spent his final years. Until now. The attic held boxes, everything labeled, newspaper clippings about missing pets, journal entries. It came again tonight. I fed it the neighbor's cat. It says it will take one of mine. Drawings depicting something tall and gray with too many limbs, wearing faces like masks. And tapes, dozens of cassettes, all unlabeled except one. Don't play it. Lacey sat on the dusty floor, tape in hand. She heard the house settling, old wood creaking. A door slammed downstairs, just the wind. She found a tape player. Battery-powered, corroded but functional. She pressed play. Static, then Rick Rainbow's Lonesome Whistle, the one-hit wonder from 1964. But underneath whispered, reversed. Feed it or it feeds on you. A child's voice repeating. Lacey stopped the tape, hands shaking. She grabbed the box labeled 1973 and ran downstairs, not caring about shadows moving in her peripheral vision. She drove to the only person who might believe her. Martha Chen lived in a converted Victorian on the edge of town, Enfield's unofficial historian. 70s, never married, rarely leaving her house. Martha answered in a robe, curlers in gray hair. "Lacey, it's 6 in the morning. I found the tapes, please. It's about my grandfather." Martha's annoyance vanished, replaced by fear. "Come in, lock the door, don't look out the windows." Chapter 2: The Archivist. Martha's house smelled of old paper and lavender, with that metallic scent underneath. She led Lacey to a sitting room crowded with books and filing cabinets. "The tapes first," Martha said, pouring tea. She must have been awake, waiting. Lacey pulled out the Play IT cassette. Martha took it with trembling hands. "Your grandfather played this for me once near the end." She pressed play. Rick Rainbow's melancholy voice, and underneath, "Feed it or it feeds on you." Martha stopped the tape. Do you know what Rick Rainbow really was? A singer. A victim. She pulled out a thick folder. In 1963, Richard Rainbow was a railroad worker in Enfield, 24, engaged. On October 14, 1963, he disappeared from his boarding house. Found 3 days later on the tracks, naked, mouth open, eyes white. Heart attack, they said. But he had a career, made records. The thing on the tracks didn't kill him, it changed him. Martha opened the folder, yellowed newspaper clippings. He woke in hospital 2 weeks later, couldn't speak for a month. When he did, he talked about the beautiful music and the thing with 3 eyes. 6 months later, he recorded Lonesome Whistle, instant hit for 3 weeks. So, listen to the lyrics. "The train is coming, won't you lay your body down? It sees you in the dark, it sees you when you're sleeping. Feed the engine, feed the fire, feed the thing with 3 eyes." Martha's voice dropped. He wrote a love song to the creature. Then it took its payment, his voice, his talent, his sanity. He spent 40 years in institutions, died in 2004. But first he buried something in the master tapes. The message. The thing's terms set to music. Martha pulled out another folder. 1913, 1943, 1973. Every 30 years, on the night of the lunar eclipse, the creature feeds. It negotiates, finds someone desperate, offers deals. "Feed me and I'll give you what you want. But the price." She opened the folder. First photo. Men in early 20th century clothing by railroad tracks, celebrating. In the background, a gray blur, limbs visible, eyes reflecting camera flash. Next photo, 1943. Same location, different men, same blur, closer, more defined. Last photo, 1973. Henry McDaniel stood with her grandmother, smiling but eyes terrified. Behind them, clearly visible, the thing. 8 feet tall, bent forward. Skin gray and glistening, covered in barnacle growths. 6 fingers on each hand, 6 toes on each foot. Face a nightmare of mouths. Dozens of sizes spiraling across its head, each filled with needle teeth. 3 eyes glowing faintly, arranged in a triangle. "Your grandfather made the bargain in 1943, Martha whispered. 20 years old, fresh from the war, no prospects. The creature offered lifetime of comfort, successful business, thriving family. All he had to do was feed it when it woke." Feed it what? At first, animals, but by 1973 it wanted human prey. When your grandfather hesitated. She pulled out a final photo. Family portrait, Christmas 1972. Henry, grandmother, her father as teenager, and 2 other children, twins, no older than 6. "I didn't know my father had siblings." "You wouldn't, they died in 1973. Influenza," the certificate said. But Henry's journals tell different story. The creature was impatient. When Henry refused to give strangers, it took payment early. He wouldn't. He didn't have a choice. That's how bargains work, once made, unchangeable. The variable is who gets fed. The doorbell rang. Both women jumped. Martha grabbed Lacey's arm. Don't answer it. It could be the mailman. It's not. Martha's voice was barely audible. It's never anyone good, not anymore. The bell rang again. Then knocking, 3 sharp raps, 2, then 1. The pattern, Martha breathed. Henry's knock from 1973. It's mocking us. Lacey walked to the window, pulling back the curtain. Empty porch, welcome mat, potted plant, wind chime moving in still air. She looked down. On the step, arranged in a neat line, 7 teeth, each 6 inches long, curved and yellowed, still wet. Beneath them, scratched into wood. 3 days, 7 souls, or I take the town. Below, smaller. Your grandfather kept his word, will you? Chapter 3, The Skeptics. They arrived in convoy, rented SUVs plastered with Cryptid Quest logos, YouTube channel with 2.3 million subscribers. 5 people. Leader, Drew Harlow, tall with perfect hair, shouting orders while teams scrambled with cameras. This is bad, Martha said from her window. They'll provoke it. Maybe that's good, if it attacks them on camera. People will call it hoax, and the creature will have 5 more victims. Martha filled doorways with salt while they went through Henry's journals. October 3, 1973. It came to house tonight. Stood outside window saying to twins. Mary says they slept. I saw their eyes open, listening. October 10, 1973. Twins are sick. High fevers, hallucinations. Mary thinks flu. I know better, taking them early, punishing me. October 12, 1973. Found formula. 7 for 7. 7 years peace for every soul fed. It wants to bargain again. October 14, 1973. Bought gun today. Silver bullets blessed by priest. Don't know if it will work. Won't give it more. October 14, 1973. It's waiting at trestle. Says will accept substitute, bring stranger, spare family. Told it no. Going to kill it. Lacey closed the journal. He didn't kill it, he fed it. Yes, Martha was at the window again. Autopsy found remains in his stomach. Human remains. Official story. He went mad, cannibalized drifter, shot himself. But we know better. The creature made him eat. Made him or convinced him. It gets in your head, finds weaknesses, fears, desires. Your grandfather wanted to save his family, so it gave choice. Eat or watch them be eaten. That's not a choice. No, but it feels like one. Martha stood. We need to go to the trestle. Tonight before eclipse, we need to see what's happening. Is that safe? No, but necessary. They drove Martha's Buick to the edge of town. The trestle was a mile east, accessible only by unmaintained dirt road. They parked at the trailhead and walked, flashlights cutting through gathering dark. Tracks led through dead trees across dry creek bed to the trestle itself. Wooden bridge spanning shallow ravine, 60 feet across, rails gleaming in moonlight. Something was different. Rails looked too clean, too polished. Wood seemed freshly treated, creosote strong, and the ravine below. Lacey shone her light down. The dry creek was full of water, black still, reflecting stars, but wrong stars, too many moving. Don't look directly, Martha whispered. Peripheral vision only. Lacey stared at tracks while seeing water peripherally. Stars in reflection gathered into shapes, human shapes floating beneath surface. Previous victims, Martha said. It keeps them, wears them. Wears them. Faces, voices for communication, bargaining. Martha approached the edge. Your grandfather's voice is probably down there. The twins, Rick Rainbow, all the others back to 1913. Lacey thought of the whisper at the gas station. It spoke to me, said we remember Henry. Wearing his memory, his patterns. Martha sprinkled salt along the trestle edge, murmuring. The water rippled without wind. Shapes turned, looked up with eyes reflecting no light. We should go, Lacey said. Not yet, look. Martha pointed across the bridge. Movement on the other side, tall, gray, bending and flowing. "It's early," Martha whispered. "Not supposed to be active until eclipse." Something's changed, the skeptics, they provoked it somehow. The creature reached the near side and stopped. From 30 feet away, Lacey smelled it, rotting meat, wet fur, something chemical like burning plastic. It stood upright, unfolding to full height, and Lacey saw it was bigger than the photograph suggested. 9 feet tall, skin not gray but translucent. Beneath moved things that might have been veins or something else. 3 eyes opened, glowing. They fixed on Lacey, and she felt the gaze like physical pressure, hands on her skull pressing inward. "McDaniel," it said, her grandfather's voice, her father's voice, her own voice in chorus. "Little McDaniel, you've come to feed me." "No," Lacey managed, teeth chattering. "You will." The creature stepped onto the trestle. Wood sang under its weight, high-pitched whine like metal under stress. "You already have, the one at the station. I tasted him because of you, because you left door open, because you were afraid." Lacey wanted to scream it wasn't true, but she couldn't speak. The creature's gaze held her paralyzed. "7 souls," it crooned, stepping closer. 7 for 70 years, but I'm generous, little McDaniel. 7 for a century. Your children free from worry, all because you did what grandfather couldn't. "Don't listen," Martha hissed, holding her salt bag like a shield. "It lies." "Does it?" Martha Chen, who never married, never risked love because she saw what happened to Henry. The creature's mouths all opened, spiraling rings of teeth. "I've known your name since before you were born. Your grandmother whispered it in 1943 when she begged me to spare her firstborn." Martha stumbled back, face pale. "You're lying." "Join your grandmother, she's waiting." The creature gestured toward the ravine, and black water surged upward, forming shapes, reaching hands. "No," Lacey grabbed Martha, pulled her back, away from trestle, away from reaching water. "We have to run." They ran. Behind them the creature laughed, breaking glass and screaming metal, and the laughter followed through dead trees, across dry creek, to Martha's car. Only when inside, doors locked, engine running, did Lacey realize she'd left her flashlight on the trestle. Standing next to it, watching with 3 glowing eyes, was the thing that had cursed her family for 3 generations. It raised one 6-fingered hand and waved. Then it was gone, and the flashlight winked out, and only their breathing remained. Chapter 4: The Professor. Dr. Harlan Benson's van was a mobile laboratory, crammed with equipment. The caged creature, Benson called it a specimen, but Lacey could only think of it as a rabbit with antlers, whimpered in the corner, its human eyes tracking them with desperate intelligence. "It's a juvenile," Benson explained, driving behind Martha's Buick. "Found it near the river this morning, caught in a trap." "What is it?" "Officially, nothing. Unofficially, have you heard of the jackalope?" "Myth, tourist bait." "Myths have roots. The Shope papillomavirus causes horn-like growths in rabbits, but this," he glanced at the cage, "this is engineered." "By what?" "By whom? The same thing feeding in your town for over a century." Lacey thought of the creature at the trestle, the spiral mouths, 3 eyes. "It made this." "It makes many things: servants, scouts, bait." Benson showed her grainy photos on his tablet: dog with too many legs, deer with human hands, fish with spiral teeth. It manipulates biological matter, reshapes living things. Sometimes it creates something new that can reproduce. He nodded at the cage. "Breeding pair of jackalopes, released 50 years ago as an experiment, multiplying ever since." "Why?" "Why does any predator create more predators? To expand territory, ensure food supply." Benson pulled into Martha's driveway. "The creature is waking up, Lacey. The eclipse in 2 days isn't just feeding opportunity, it's a threshold. If it crosses, it won't need to sleep anymore. It'll be awake permanently. The jackalopes can stop it." "Kill it." Benson opened the van door. "The creature has a weakness, needs a host physical anchor. For a century, that's been the trestle, wood, iron, accumulated suffering. But if we introduce competing organism, a virus, a predator, Benson lifted the cage. Jackalopes were designed to hunt the creature's servants. They can do more if properly motivated. Martha stood on her porch watching. You brought that thing here. Are you insane? Desperate, he set the cage down. The creature marked 7 souls. You need 7 sacrifices to put it back to sleep. But what if you could kill it instead? Nothing can kill it. Henry tried with bullets and prayers. I'm talking biology. He opened the cage, grabbed the jackalope by its scruff. It went limp, submitting. Lacey saw its belly was distended, pregnant. The offspring are born aggressive. They hunt immediately, targeting anything smelling like their creator. Benson produced a syringe. If we extract the creature's scent, biological signature, inject it into the mother, her offspring will hunt it specifically. You're weaponizing her babies, giving you a chance to survive. He looked at each of them. Eclipse is in 2 days. Creature will be strongest but also most vulnerable, physical form manifest, anchored, unable to flee. If we infect it then, it'll die. Consumed from within. Benson stroked the jackalope's head. Can you get close enough? Keep it occupied while offspring work. Lacey thought of the creature's offer at the trestle. It wants me to bring sacrifices. 7 souls. It said if I did, it would leave my family alone. And you believed it? No, but it believes me or wants to. She met Benson's eyes. I can get close, keep it talking. While it's engaged, we release offspring upwind. They home in on scent marker and attack. Once creature is fighting on 2 fronts. I run. Lacey looked at the pregnant jackalope. I'll do it. Lacey, no. Someone has to, Martha, and I'm the only one it wants. They spent the next 24 hours in Martha's basement, converted to makeshift laboratory. The jackalope gave birth to 6 offspring, each no bigger than a kitten but with teeth that could already cut flesh. Pink, hairless, antlers just nubs, but their eyes were human from the moment they opened. Scent extraction is tricky, Benson explained. Need sample from creature itself or direct servant, something carrying biological signature. The crew at the plant, Lacey said, they're connected, their eyes. Eyes are perfect. Optic tissue retains scent markers longest. From possessed crew members. Preferably alive, but, Benson shrugged, fresher better. They returned to the meatpacking plant, abandoned since 1985. It squatted on the town's edge like a tumor, windows boarded, loading docks choked with weeds, parking lot cracked and sprouting saplings. Fresh tire tracks led to the main entrance. Stay behind me, Martha whispered. Don't look at reflective surfaces, it uses them as doorways. Inside, smell of rust and old blood. They followed lights to the processing floor where cattle had once been led to death. Equipment still there, hooks from rails, saws and blades, stainless steel tables stained brown. The Cryptid quest crew stood in a circle, heads bowed like in prayer. In the center, an organic shape, flesh arranged in rough sphere 3 feet across, pulsing. Egg breeding sac. They've been feeding it and it's been feeding them, trading dreams for worship. Can we stop it? Not here. Interrupt the cycle, it'll burst. Spores infect everyone within 100 yards. They turned to leave when the sac stirred. It split like a flower blooming and from within. Martha, Lacey, join us. Drew Harlow's voice, but layered underneath. Rick Rainbow's tenor, Henry McDaniel's baritone, children's voices. We have wonders to show you, truth behind stars, just kneel, open mouth, accept the gift. The 5 crew members raised their heads. Their eyes were gone, replaced with smooth skin, somehow still looking at Lacey. Their mouths opened, thin tendrils of flesh extending from each one, connecting them to the central sac like umbilical cords. Lacey, run, Martha shouted. But it was too late. The crew members turned as one, moving with jerky puppet grace, mouths opening wider, revealing rows of teeth growing within. "The eyes," Benson shouted. "Get the eyes." Lacey ran toward Drew's fallen body, bat raised. She brought it down on his face, feeling bone give way, something wet spray her hands. The others screamed, high and human and charged. She tore at Drew's face, fingers digging into wet sockets, pulling at jelly and string, and ran with the sample in her hand as Benson and Martha sprinted ahead. They made it to the car and Martha floored it. Behind them, the plant's windows exploded outward, showering glass, and from within came laughter, the creature's laughter, amused and hungry and very close. Back at the house, Benson worked in the basement while Martha salted doorways. He held up a vial of cloudy liquid. Scent marker is active. Offspring reacted immediately, hunting posture, ears back, teeth bared. "When?" Martha asked. "Eclipse begins 9:47 p.m. tomorrow. Total coverage at 10:23. That's our window." Benson pulled out a map. "During totality, shadow path is widest, creature most exposed. Has to manifest physically, fully, leaving nothing in reserve. That's when we strike. And if we miss, then we die." He put the tablet away. "Lacey, you should rest. Tomorrow will be difficult." She tried to sleep but saw Drew's smooth face turning toward her, the twins smiling with their dolls, her father's hollow eyes. She gave up at midnight and found Martha in the kitchen. "Couldn't sleep?" "No." "Your grandmother," Martha said softly. "She didn't die naturally either." Lacey stopped, turned. "Henry didn't mention it, but I found truth in town records. She drowned herself in 1974, year after twins died. Body never found. 6 months later, woman matching description seen walking along tracks heading east." "What are you saying?" "She might still be down there in the water with others. If creature dies, if patterns are released," Martha's voice broke. "She might come home, they all might." Lacey thought of water in the ravine, shapes moving beneath, faces reaching up. "I hope they find peace." Chapter 5: The Eve. Eclipse day dawned clear and cold. Lacey spent morning with Benson, checking equipment, testing Offspring's response to scent marker. "They'll follow it for miles," he confirmed. "Once infected with marker, nothing else matters. They'll hunt until they find target or die trying." At the trestle they made final reconnaissance. Site was quiet, ravine dry again, black water vanished. Tracks clear, wood solid. But trees near bridge were stripped of bark, exposed wood covered in slime. Air smelled sweet and rotten. On the rails, someone had arranged teeth in careful patterns, spirals, concentric circles. "It's preparing," Martha whispered, "setting stage." Back at the house, they loaded into Benson's van. Equipment, Offspring in portable cage, scent marker and backup vials. "The plan," Benson reviewed, driving toward the trestle. "Lacey approaches from west, walking tracks. Creature will detect her immediately. It's been waiting. She offers herself as 8th sacrifice, keeping it focused. Meanwhile, Martha and I circle to east, upwind, and release Offspring. They home in on scent marker and attack. Once creature is engaged, Lacey runs. Nothing about this is simple. It's our only chance." He pulled over quarter-mile from trestle, hiding van behind abandoned barn. "Lacey, you go first. Give us 10 minutes to get into position." She nodded, throat too tight for speech. She climbed out, scent marker vial in pocket, and walked toward the tracks. Moon was rising, huge and orange, beginning slow slide into shadow. Lacey felt the eclipse building, pressure in her chest like moment before thunderstorm. Air tasted of copper and ozone. She found the tracks and followed them. The trestle was visible now, and it was occupied. 7 figures stood on the bridge in a circle. The Cryptid Quest crew, fully transformed, bodies elongated and gray, faces smooth except for stretched mouths. In the center, the sack pulsed, reaching almost to surrounding trees. Above it all, standing on highest point of trestle, the creature. It had grown 12 feet or more. Skin now opaque, gray, and thick like hide. 3 eyes burned brighter than moon, and the spiral of mouths opened and closed in rhythmic patterns, breathing in unison. "McDaniel," it said, voice thunder, earthquake, metal tearing. "You've come to fulfill your grandfather's bargain." Lacey stopped at Bridge's edge. "I've come to negotiate." "Negotiate?" the creature laughed, breaking glass. "You have nothing to negotiate with. 7 already prepared. Eclipse begins in minutes. This is my time, little McDaniel, my feeding time." "I offer 8, Lacey said, voice steady despite fear. "Myself added to 7, 8 souls for 100 years of peace. Better." The creature descended, flowing down trestle supports like water, reforming at near end. It towered over her, shadow-blocking moon. She smelled it, rot, hunger, ancient endless need. 8, it mused. "Your grandfather offered 7, thought it would save his children." "It didn't." "No, because bargains require trust, little McDaniel, and I don't trust you." It leaned closer, 3 eyes fixed on her face. "But curious. Why offer yourself? What hope to gain?" "An end, to cycle, to fear. If I give myself, will you leave rest of town alone? Forever." "Forever is long time." The creature's mouths all smiled. "But I promise, if you give yourself willingly, without resistance, I will sleep for century. Your children's children will grow old and die without knowing my name." "Yes." "Then come." It extended one 6-fingered hand, palm up, inviting. "Join 7, join feast." Lacey stepped onto the bridge. 7 crew members turned featureless faces toward her, mouths opening in welcome. The sack pulsed faster, excited, shapes moving within it. She took another step, another. "Eclipse," the creature said, "begins now." Moon darkened. Shadows swept across land, and creature grew brighter, more solid, more real. Lacey felt its presence like physical pressure, like gravity, pulling her forward. She reached into her pocket, felt the vial. Now had to be now. "I have something for you," she said. "A taste before main course." She pulled out the vial, uncapped it, threw contents in creature's face. It screamed, tearing metal, and stumbled back, clawing at its face where liquid touched. 7 crew members staggered, confused, connection momentarily broken. "Now," Lacey shouted. "Now, now, now." From east end of bridge, Benson emerged, cage in hands. He opened it and 6 creatures burst forth, pink bodies streaking across wood, homing in on scent marker, teeth bared, human eyes gleaming. The creature saw them. Its 3 eyes widened, and for the first time Lacey saw fear. "Not these," it hissed, "not the hunters." The offspring hit. They swarmed up creature's legs, burrowing into flesh, teeth finding purchase in gray hide. It thrashed, trying to scrape them off, but too many, too fast. "Run," Benson shouted. "Lacey, run." She sprinted toward East End, toward Benson and safety, heart pounding, lungs burning. Something wrapped around her ankle. She fell, chin hitting wood, teeth clacking. She looked back, tendril of flesh, gray and pulsing, wrapping her leg. "Thought you could kill me." The creature's voice was ragged, strained. Offspring burrowing deeper, visible moving beneath skin, chewing toward core. "I am older than this world, eternal, cannot." Lacey grabbed backup vial from other pocket, hidden there just in case, and smashed it against the tendril. It screamed, flesh sizzling where mother's blood touched, and the tendril released. She was up and running, Benson's hand pulling her toward Bridge's end. Behind them, creature thrashed, offspring disappearing into its body, and the sound of its agony was like nothing she'd ever heard. They made it to solid ground, to Martha waiting with Van, and piled in just as creature let out final scream. Sound cut off abruptly. Lacey turned and looked back. Trestle was empty. Creature was gone. 7 crew members lay in ravine below, motionless, transformation reversed, human faces peaceful in death. The sack in center of bridge had burst, spilling contents across wood. It's done, Benson breathed. We actually did it. Eclipse was ending. Moon emerged from shadow, bright and full, and Lacey McDaniel cried for the first time in years. Chapter 6: The Aftermath. They buried 7 crew members in mass grave on town's edge, far from Trestle, far from anywhere creature touched. Sheriff Doherty filled out paperwork. Accidental exposure to toxic chemicals. No one contradicted. Dr. Benson left 3 days after Eclipse, jackalope specimens in van, research notes packed in waterproof cases. Creature is dead, he told Lacey, shaking her hand. Offspring consumed it from within, but patterns are still out there. Consciousness absorbed people it took, released now, scattered, not destroyed. Some will find their way back. Is that good? Don't know, never seen it before. He climbed into van. Your grandmother, others, they might come home. Martha Chen died 6 months later, peacefully in sleep, surrounded by books. She left everything to Lacey: house, research, accumulated knowledge of lifetime spent fighting monsters. Lacey moved into the Victorian, cataloging photographs, transcribing journals, organizing evidence of Enfield's long nightmare. And she waited. Chapter 7: The Visitor. It was a year to the day after Eclipse when first one came. Lacey was in kitchen making coffee when temperature suddenly dropped. Window over sink frosted over despite October warmth. She turned and saw a woman in doorway, translucent, faint, like image projected on smoke. She recognized her immediately. Photograph from attic, Christmas portrait, smiling face holding terror in eyes. Grandmother. Figure raised one hand, pointed toward Trestle, then faded. Lacey grabbed jacket and ran. The trestle had changed. Wood was new, rails gleaming as if someone maintained it, and there were people on it, 7 standing in circle. Ricky was there, looking younger than in life, face peaceful. The twins, holding hands, dolls gone but smiles genuine. Rick Rainbow, wearing 1960s suit, humming tune Lacey almost recognized. And others. Woman in 1940s clothing, man in railroad overalls, faces from photographs, journals from creature's memory. They turned as Lacey approached, eyes bright, aware, alive in way they hadn't been for decades. Thank you, Ricky said, voice clear and strong. We can go now, couldn't before, it held us. Where will you go? Home or somewhere new, somewhere without hunger? Will you stay, can you? We're not ghosts, Lacey, just released, patterns with momentum. He stepped closer and she felt chill but not unpleasant. We'll fade soon, but before we do, we wanted to thank you and warn you. Warn me. Creature is dead, but not only one. Others, older, hungrier, waiting for chance. He gestured toward horizon. Enfield is safe now. Trestle is just Trestle, but other towns, not so lucky. What should I do? Remember, record, prepare. The twins stepped forward, each taking Lacey's hand, cold but solid. Someone needs to know. Someone needs to remember the dark is real, that monsters are real, that bargains are never fair. I'm just one person. You were, now you're something more. McDaniel, who ended cycle, who chose to fight instead of feed. Ricky faded, edges blurring. We're going, but we'll see you again in patterns, in memories, in dark. They vanished, leaving only Trestle and Moon and sound of train whistle that hadn't blown in 40 years. Lacey stood alone on bridge, and for first time in her life, she wasn't afraid. Chapter 8: The Deal. Town council approached her 3 months later. Tourism, the mayor said, smile too wide, eyes too eager. We could capitalize on this. Mystery of Enfield, Trestle terror. People love that stuff. You want to make spectacle of what happened. Want to save this town. He leaned forward. You've got records, journals, whole history. Turn it into museum, walking tour, haunted house. Revitalize Enfield. Lacey thought of grandfather feeding strays, desperate to keep family safe. Twins smiling with dolls. Ricky warning her about others, the ones still waiting. No. Lacey, be reasonable. I said no, she stood. Creature is dead, patterns released. Trestle is just trestle. Turning it into tourist trap would be disrespectful to people who died, who fought. Those people are gone. You're only one who remembers. And I'll keep remembering, but won't sell it, won't commodify it. She stopped at door, turned back. If you really want to save Enfield, fix schools, repair roads, build something real instead of fake. Next day, sign appeared on edge of town. Welcome to Enfield, historic monster festival. Council had voted without her, turning her family's tragedy into marketing. Lacey stood before sign for long time, reading cheerful text, cartoon drawing of gray blob with 3 eyes. Thought about tearing it down, screaming truth until someone listened. But didn't. Beneath anger, beneath disgust, she understood. Creature had offered bargains, traded peace for food. Town had accepted, generation after generation. This was just another bargain, another sacrifice. She walked back to Martha's house. She had work to do. Chapter 9, The Keeper. She bought gas station 6 months later. Carl had retired to Florida, happy to sell. Lacey took over night shift herself, sitting behind same register, listening to same fluorescent buzz. But things were different now. She knew what smell was, residue, memory, psychic scar left by century of feeding. She kept baseball bat under counter, Henry's journals locked in safe, and she kept eyes open. Found evidence in Martha's files, Benson's notes, 12 sites, 12 creatures, 12 towns living under shadow. Couldn't fight them all, but could document them. Warn people, be ready. On anniversary of eclipse, October 14, 2024, Sheriff Doherty came in. He looked old, hair completely white, hands trembling on counter. He ordered coffee, black, sat at table near window, staring at empty highway. I saw it once, he said, in 73, fresh out of academy. Lacey stopped wiping counter. Saw what? The thing, whatever you call it. He took sip, burned tongue, didn't seem to notice. Henry called us out, said monster on tracks. We thought he was crazy, but we went, procedure. And you saw it. Saw something, tall, gray, too many eyes, feeding, I think. Something on ground, used to be person, it looked at me, right at me. What did you do? Ran, got in car, drove away, never told anyone. Let Henry take fall. Let them call him crazy, call it suicide, bury truth, because I was afraid. You were right to be afraid. I was coward, he set down cup, but not anymore, that's why I'm here. Why? Because something's happening, out at Trestle, people seeing lights, shapes, and this was delivered to my office. He pulled out folded paper. No stamp, no return address. Lacey unfolded it, message in block letters. The hunger remains, the bargain is not complete, see you in 2053. Below a drawing, spiral of teeth, 3 eyes, 6-fingered hand raised in greeting. Hoax, Lacey said, voice uncertain. Is it? Doherty stood. I don't know what you did out there, but things like that don't die easy. They wait, remember, come back when conditions right. What do you want? Truth, when it comes back, and it will. I want to be ready, want to fight, not run, not hide, fight. And if we lose? Doherty smiled, tired and sad. Then at least we'll have tried. He left and Lacey stood alone, message crumpled in hand. She walked to back door, looked at faint scratches, 6 parallel lines in metal. Opened it, looked at tracks, trestle barely visible. For a moment thought she saw movement, gray shape bending over rails, but when she blinked, gone. Chapter 10, The Cycle. They found first body 3 weeks later. Truck driver at rest stop 10 miles east, laid out on asphalt naked, mouth open, eyes milky white. No wounds, no trauma. Doherty called Lacey to scene. She stood at police tape, looked at body, felt cold certainty settle in chest. It's not same, Doherty said. Creature is dead, you killed it. Killed one, she knelt, studied pattern. Others, they communicate, share, learn, using same patterns, same methods, saying I'm here hungry, I remember. New one. Or old one woken up by what we did, she walked to car. What we did before, research, prepare, find anchor, weakness, price. Thought you wouldn't make bargains. Won't let town commodify pain, but survival. She looked at body, at empty face, once person. Sometimes you have to bargain to survive. Sometimes you have to feed dark to keep light. She drove back to station, pulled out Henry's journals, Benson's notes, Martha's files. Began to plan. Creature might be dead, but hunger remained. And Lacey McDaniel was ready. Epilogue 2053. The boy sat in empty room, VHS tape in hand. 12 years old, same age Lacey was when she first saw something at window. Henry McDaniel he knew things he shouldn't. Knew about trestle creature feeding cycle, about eclipse of 2023, death of first creature, arrival of second, about Lacey keeper, one who held line for 30 years. She was old now, very old, never married, never had children, never left Enfield. He inserted tape. Screen flickered, showed grainy image, trestle 1973, young Henry McDaniel scared, standing at edge. Behind him, visible in flashes, the creature. But different, as footage played, creature turned, looked at camera, at Henry, at boy watching through time. It waved. Screen went static, text appeared. See you in 2053. Boy turned off player, walked to window, looked at tracks, at trestle in distance. Something on bridge, tall, gray. Waving. Boy waved back. Then went to find great Aunt Lacey, to tell her time had come. Hunger was back. And this time it wasn't alone. The Depths of Erie. A horror novel. Chapter 1, The Corpse. The body washed ashore at dawn, deposited by the night's retreating tide onto a stretch of beach near Sandusky, Ohio, that the locals called Dead Man's Curve. It was a name born from shipwreck history, from the treacherous shoals that had claimed vessels for 2 centuries, but on this particular morning it seemed prophetically appropriate. Tommy Kowalski found it. Tommy, 63 years old, retired steelworker, widower, insomniac. He walked this beach every morning before sunrise, a habit born from grief and the inability to sleep through the night. He knew every rock, every driftwood log, every pattern of seaweed that the lake deposited according to its unknowable moods. This morning, something was different. The smell hit him first, a thick, organic reek that spoke of decay and deep water and things that should have stayed buried. Then he saw the shape on the sand, dark against the gray of early morning, and his heart began to pound with the terrible certainty that this was not driftwood, not seaweed, not any of the usual detritus that Lake Erie offered up. It was a man, or had been. Tommy approached slowly, his footsteps loud in the morning stillness. The body was face down, arms outstretched as if reaching for something that had remained forever out of grasp. It was bloated, the skin stretched tight and mottled with strange discolorations, deep purple bruises that spiraled around the torso, the arms, the legs. Not the random patterns of decomposition, but deliberate, structured, like something had wrapped itself around this man and squeezed. Tommy had seen drowned bodies before. In 70 years of living on the lake, you saw things, but this was different. This was wrong. He pulled out his phone, his hands shaking, and called 911. Then he sat on a nearby rock and waited, not wanting to be alone with the corpse but unwilling to leave it, as if his presence was somehow required, somehow owed to the dead. The police arrived first, followed by the county coroner, a weary woman named Dr. Elaine Voss, who had seen too much in her 20 years of service and had learned to expect worse. She examined the body without touching it, her face growing paler with each observation. Spiraling contusions, she said to the detective standing beside her. Consistent with constriction. Something wrapped around him, tight enough to burst capillaries, tight enough to crush. A snake, the detective asked. Some kind of constrictor. In Lake Erie, Dr. Voss shook her head. Impossible, this is freshwater. Whatever did this? She trailed off, her eyes fixed on the bruises, on their pattern, on their terrible implication. They turned the body over. The face was unrecognizable, bloated beyond human features, but the clothing, what remained of it, suggested a fisherman. Waders still partially intact. A jacket with a name patch that read Morrison. A wedding ring on a swollen finger. Dale Morrison, the detective said, checking his phone. Reported missing 3 days ago. Went out fishing alone, didn't come back. 3 days, Dr. Voss repeated. In this water and this heat, the decomposition should be worse, much worse. She knelt beside the body, her professional detachment warring with something that looked like fear. She pressed her stethoscope to the chest, a pointless gesture given the obvious state of death, then moved to the mouth. She used a swab, collected samples, sealed them in sterile containers. "What is it?" the detective asked. Dr. Voss stood slowly, her movements stiff, her face carefully blank. "I need to run tests, in the lab, before I say anything." "Doc." "In the lab," she repeated, her voice sharp. Then, softer, "Get him to the morgue now, and seal the beach. No one comes near this water until I say otherwise." They loaded the body into a bag, onto a gurney, into the waiting ambulance. Dr. Voss rode with it, sitting in silence, staring at the bag containing what had once been Dale Morrison. At the morgue, she performed the autopsy with mechanical precision, her hands moving through procedures she'd performed hundreds of times. External examination, internal examination, tissue samples, fluid samples, the routine of death, the choreography of medical certainty. It was when she opened the chest cavity that she found it. The lungs. She removed them, placed them on the examination tray, and stared. They were wrong. Not just damaged by drowning, that was expected, but filled with something that shouldn't exist in Lake Erie. Salt water. She ran the tests 3 times. Salinity levels consistent with ocean water, not the brackish mix of freshwater and tidal flow that you might find at a river mouth. Pure, undiluted salt water. The kind that existed in seas, in oceans, in places thousands of miles from this freshwater lake. Dr. Voss sat in her office, the test results in her hands, and felt the foundations of her world shift. She had spent her career understanding death, categorizing it, explaining it. But this defied explanation. She picked up her phone and called her grandmother. The old woman was 92. The last living speaker of their family's native language, keeper of stories that Dr. Voss had dismissed as superstition, as folklore, as the ramblings of an uneducated mind. "Babsha," she said when the old woman answered, "tell me about Bessie." A pause on the line, then, "You've seen something." "I need to know, is it real, the stories?" Her grandmother's voice dropped to a whisper, the whisper of someone speaking of things that should not be named aloud. "Bessie is real. Bessie has always been real. And Bessie is hungry." "Hungry for what?" "For us, for what we took, for what we forgot." The old woman paused. "Elaine, if you've seen something, if Bessie has fed, you must warn them, the people. The ones who don't remember, you must make them remember, or more will die. Many more." Dr. Voss hung up the phone and sat in the fluorescent-lit silence of her office. She thought of the spiraling bruises on Dale Morrison's body, of the salt water in his lungs, of the stories her grandmother had told her as a child, of the great serpent that lived in the lake's depths, that slept for decades, that woke when the water grew warm and the people grew careless. She crossed herself, an automatic gesture from a childhood she'd thought she'd outgrown, and whispered, "Bessie's been hungry." Then she picked up the phone again and called the county sheriff. "We need to talk," she said, "about the lake, about what's in it, about what we're going to do when it comes for the rest of us. Chapter 2: The Heat. July 2024 was the hottest on record. Temperatures climbed into the triple digits and stayed there, day after day, week after week. The asphalt melted in places. The power grid strained under the load of millions of air conditioners, and Lake Erie, shallowest and warmest of the Great Lakes, began to change. The water level dropped, not gradually as it had in previous drought years, but rapidly, dramatically, as if something was drinking from below. Historic lows were reached, then surpassed, then left behind. Shorelines expanded, revealing mudflats that hadn't seen sunlight in decades. Old shipwrecks emerged from the depths, their wooden bones bleaching in the merciless sun. And the algae bloomed. It started near Toledo, a green scum on the surface that spread with terrifying speed. But this was no ordinary algal bloom. The color was wrong, not the bright green of healthy cyanobacteria, but a darker shade, almost black, with metallic undertones that caught the light like oil on water. The smell was wrong too, not the rotten egg stench of decay, but something sharper, chemical, like ozone or heated copper. Riley Kovacs first noticed it from the window of the research vessel she'd chartered for the summer. She was a marine biologist, 34 years old, with a PhD from Woods Hole, and a reputation for being the scientist you called when things didn't make sense. The Ohio Department of Natural Resources had hired her to investigate the die-offs, fish by the thousands, floating belly up in the shallows, their scales covered in the same dark algae that choked the surface. Metallic content is off the charts, her assistant Marcus reported from the lab station below deck. Copper, zinc, iron, all in concentrations that should be toxic, but the algae is thriving. It's like it's eating the metals. Algae don't eat metals, Riley said, but she didn't sound certain. This algae does. Marcus emerged from below, holding a sample container. The water inside was nearly black, the algae so dense it seemed solid. And there's something else, something in the sediment. He showed her the coarse sample they'd pulled from the lakebed that morning. The top layer was normal, modern sediment, organic matter, the usual accumulation of decades. But below that, separated by a sharp line that suggested sudden deposition, was something else. Scales. Not fish scales. These were larger, much larger, each one the size of a silver dollar, overlapping in patterns that suggested they had been shed, sloughed off, deposited in quantities that defied explanation. They were iridescent, metallic, beautiful, and terrible at once. "What the hell is this?" Riley asked, touching one with a gloved finger. It was warm, warmer than the surrounding sediment, as if it had been deposited recently, as if whatever had shed it was still nearby. "I ran preliminary tests," Marcus said. "The material. It's not organic, not exactly. It's some kind of keratin-metal hybrid, like fingernails but reinforced with metallic compounds. Biologically impossible." "Nothing's biologically impossible, just biologically unprecedented." "This is unprecedented." Marcus's voice was shaking. "Riley, these scales are huge, whatever shed them. It's massive, 50 feet minimum, maybe more." Riley looked at the scales, at their size, their number, their implication. She thought of the stories she'd heard growing up in Burgess, the town where her family had summered, the legends of Bessie that everyone laughed about but no one completely dismissed. "Get me the sonar," she said. "The deepwater array. I want to map the lakebed, every trench, every canyon, every hole." "That'll take weeks." "Then we'd better start now." They worked through the night, the research vessel drifting in the dark water, the sonar pinging into the depths below. The readings were confusing, contradictory. The lakebed was changing, shifting, as if something was moving beneath the sediment, stirring it up, reshaping the contours of the underwater landscape. At 3:33 a.m., the sonar registered something massive. "Contact," Marcus said, his voice hushed. "Bearing 270 depth. Jesus, Riley, depth is 200 feet and descending." Size: 50 feet, maybe 60. Serpentine, it's moving, Riley, it's moving fast. Riley stared at the screen, at the shape that glided through the depths below. It was long, segmented, sinuous, the shape of a snake or an eel or something that combined the worst features of both. It moved with purpose, with intelligence, its path taking it in circles around the research vessel as if studying it, as if learning. "Record everything," she said. "Every ping, every reading." "It's gone," Marcus tapped the screen. "It just vanished, like it descended into something, a cave maybe, a trench. Or like it didn't want to be seen." They stayed on station until dawn, watching the sonar, waiting for the shape to return. It didn't. But when Riley finally went below to catch a few hours of sleep, she found something waiting for her. A scale, one of the metallic ones, impossibly large, resting on her pillow, warm to the touch, recently shed. And on the wall above her bunk, written in what looked like algae but smelled like copper, a single word: "Welcome." Riley didn't sleep. She sat in the galley, drinking coffee she didn't taste, staring at the scale on the table before her. Marcus found her there at sunrise, pale and shaking. "We need to go back," she said, "to shore to report this." "Report what?" Marcus asked. "That we saw a giant snake on sonar, that something left you a present. They'll think we're crazy." "Then let them think it." Riley stood, her decision made. "But I'm not staying on this water another night, not until we know what we're dealing with." They motored back to Sandusky, the research vessel cutting through water that seemed darker than it should have been, thicker, as if the algae was congealing, becoming something more than algae. The shore approached slowly, the buildings of the city emerging from the heat haze like mirages. As they docked, Riley saw the crowd. Police cars, ambulances, news vans. Something had happened while they were at sea. Something bad. She found out from a dock worker, a grizzled man with a face like weathered wood and eyes that had seen too much. "Another one," he said, not needing to be asked. "Washed up this morning. Young guy tourist went for a swim yesterday afternoon. Found him on the rocks near Cedar Point. Drowned." The dockworker laughed, a sound like gravel scraping metal. "That's what they're saying, but I saw the body, saw what was left of it." He leaned close, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Something ate him, miss. Something ate him from the inside out." Riley thought of the sonar contact, of the scale on her pillow, of the word written on her wall. "What's your name?" she asked. Frank Dobbs." "Frank, do you believe in Bessie?" The old man's face went pale. He made a sign, not the cross, but something older, something that predated Christianity in these parts. "I believe the lake is hungry," he said. "I believe it's been hungry for a long time, and I believe something down there is waking up." "Waking up from what?" "From sleep, from waiting, from dreaming about the days when it ruled this water before we came, before we forgot." Frank turned away, busying himself with a rope that needed no coiling. "You should leave, miss. Take your boat, your equipment, your questions. Leave before the lake decides you're worth keeping." Riley didn't leave. She couldn't. She was a scientist, a rationalist, a woman who had built her career on understanding the unknown. She wouldn't run from a mystery, no matter how terrifying, no matter how impossible. But that night, as she lay in her motel room, listening to the sound of the lake lapping against the shore, she thought she heard something else. Something massive, moving in the deep water. Something that sang in frequencies too low for human hearing, but that resonated in her bones, in her teeth, in the hollow places of her heart. And she dreamed of spiraling bruises, of salt water in her lungs, of being wrapped in coils that squeezed and squeezed until there was nothing left but the dark. Chapter 3: The Bounty. The news broke on a Tuesday. By Wednesday, Sandusky was overrun. "Monster in Lake Erie," the headline screamed. "Bessie lives. $100,000 reward for proof." The reward had been posted by an anonymous donor. later revealed to be a tech billionaire with a taste for cryptozoology, and it had drawn every crackpot, every thrill seeker, every desperate soul looking for a payday to the shores of the lake. They came with cameras and harpoons and diving equipment. They came with boats and jet skis and drones. They came with faith and fear and the desperate hope that the legends were true. Riley watched the invasion from her motel window, feeling a mixture of disgust and dread. These people didn't understand what they were dealing with. They thought this was a game, a publicity stunt, a chance for viral fame. They didn't know about the scales, the sonar contact, the word written on her wall. They didn't know that Bessie was real and hungry and learning. She found an ally in an unlikely place. Sheriff Dan Crawford, a heavy-set man in his 50s with a face that showed every year of his service, knocked on her door that evening. "Dr. Kovacs," he said when she opened it, "I need to talk to you about what you saw." "I didn't see anything, just a sonar contact. Could have been a malfunction." "Could have been," Crawford didn't sound convinced. "But you've been asking questions about the bodies, about the algae, about things that don't make sense." "I'm a scientist. I specialize in things that don't make sense." "Then come with me." Crawford turned, not waiting for agreement. "There's something you need to see." He took her to the county morgue, to a room in the basement that smelled of formaldehyde and secrets. 3 bodies lay on steel tables, covered with sheets. Crawford pulled back the first sheet. Dale Morrison, or what remained of him. The spiraling bruises were visible even in death, patterns of constriction that told a story of being wrapped, squeezed, crushed by something massive. "Second body," Crawford said, moving to the next table. "Tourist, swimming near Cedar Point. Same bruising pattern, same cause of death, constriction." He pulled back the third sheet, and Riley gasped. This one was different. This one was worse. The body was hollow, not figuratively, literally. The torso had been opened, the organs removed, the cavity cleaned with surgical precision. The ribs were splayed outward like wings, like fingers reaching for something. The face was frozen in an expression of terror so profound it had distorted the features beyond recognition. What did this?" Riley whispered. "We don't know." Crawford's voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. "Autopsy showed the organs were dissolved, not removed, dissolved. Some kind of acid maybe, or something biological, something in the saliva." "Saliva?" "There were traces around the wounds." Crawford pulled out his phone, showed her photos. Close-ups of the hollowed torso, the edges of the wounds, the glistening residue that coated everything. "Lab says it's similar to digestive enzymes, like something ate him from the inside." Riley stared at the photos, at the body, at the impossible evidence of something that hunted humans, that consumed them, that left nothing but hollow shells. "The heat," she said slowly, "the dropping water levels, the algae, it's all connected." "Connected how?" "Something's waking up, something that's been dormant. The changing conditions, the warm water, the low levels, it's creating an environment where it can thrive, where it can hunt." "Bessie," Crawford said, not a question. "I don't know what Bessie is, but I know it's real, and I know it's killing people." Crawford was silent for a long moment. Then, "My grandfather told me stories about the lake, about what lived in it. I thought they were just stories." "What did he say?" "He said Bessie wasn't one creature, she was many, a colony sleeping in the deep trenches. He said they hibernated for decades, sometimes centuries, waking only when the water grew warm and the food grew plentiful." Crawford's eyes were distant, remembering. "He said the last time they woke was 1885. Before that, 1856. Before that, 1827, every 29 or 30 years, like clockwork." 30 years, Riley repeated. That's a generation. That's how long it takes them to mature, to breed, to grow hungry enough to hunt." Crawford turned to face her, his expression grave. "Dr. Kovacs, I think we're dealing with more than one creature. I think we're dealing with a population. A colony that's been sleeping, waiting, and is now awake and feeding. Then we need to warn people, close the beaches, evacuate the shoreline. I've tried, the mayor won't hear it, the governor thinks I'm crazy. The Coast Guard is monitoring the situation. Crawford's voice was bitter. Nobody wants to believe in monsters, not until they see them, not until it's too late. Then we make them see. Riley pulled out her phone, showed him the sonar readings. I have proof. The contact, the scales, the sediment samples. We go public, we force them to listen. And if they still don't listen, then we fight. Riley's voice was hard, determined. We find these things, we study them, we find their weaknesses, and we stop them before they kill again. Crawford studied her for a long moment, weighing her resolve against the impossibility of what they faced. Then he nodded. There's someone you should meet. Someone who knows more about Bessie than anyone alive. Who? Alina Voss, the coroner. She's been studying the bodies, the patterns, the history, and she's seen things she won't talk about to anyone else. They found Alina in her office, surrounded by files and photographs and the accumulated evidence of deaths that shouldn't have happened. She was older than Riley expected, her hair white, her face lined, but her eyes were sharp, alert, burning with an intensity that spoke of obsession. You're the biologist, Alina said, not looking up from her work. The one who found the scales. Yes. And you want to stop them. I want to understand them. Stopping them comes after. Alina laughed, a dry, humorless sound. Understanding won't help you. They've been here longer than we have, longer than the glaciers, longer than the mountains. They were swimming in these waters when the first humans crossed the land bridge. They watched us build our cities, our boats, our civilizations. They learned us, studied us. Learned us how? The same way we learn them, by watching, by waiting, by being patient. Alina finally looked up, her eyes meeting Riley's. They're not animals, Dr. Kovacs. They're not even predators, not exactly. They're something else. Something that thinks, plans, remembers. You sound like you admire them. I fear them. Alina's voice was flat. There's a difference. She pulled out a file, pushed it across the desk. Riley opened it to find photographs, old photographs, black and white, dating back to the 19th century. Each one showed the same thing, a long serpentine shape in the water, barely visible, always distant, always watching. The earliest known photograph of Bessie, Alina said, 1885, taken by a photographer named James Murray. He died 2 days later, drowned officially, but the body, she pulled out another photo. The body was hollowed, just like our victims. Riley flipped through the file. More photos, more dates, more deaths. A pattern stretching back centuries, regular as clockwork, every 30 years. They're territorial, Alina said. Each colony claims a section of the lake. They hunt in shifts, never depleting their territory completely. They leave enough prey to breed, to multiply, to provide for the next generation. That's sophisticated behavior. They're sophisticated creatures. Alina leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper. And they're evolving. The ones from 1885 were different from the ones from 1956. Smaller, less complex. Each generation is larger, smarter, more complete. Complete how? The 1956 specimens had vestigial limbs, small, non-functional but present. The current generation, Alina trailed off, her eyes distant. I think they're developing hands, Dr. Kovacs' fingers, the ability to manipulate objects, to use tools. Riley thought of the word on her wall. Welcome. Written in algae, yes, but written, deliberate, intelligent. They're becoming more human, she said slowly. Or we're becoming more like them. Alina stood, moving to the window, looking out at the lake that glimmered in the afternoon light. The heat, the dropping water levels, the algae, it's not just waking them up. It's changing them, accelerating their development, making them hungrier. Then we need to act fast, before they develop further, before they become something we can't stop. How? Elena turned back, her face pale. How do you stop something that's been here for 10,000 years? Something that's survived the ice ages, the meteor impacts, the rise and fall of civilizations. Everything has a weakness, Riley said. We just have to find it. She left the morgue with more questions than answers, her mind racing through possibilities. Sonar disruption, chemical deterrence, physical barriers. Each option seemed inadequate against creatures that could dive to crushing depths, that could dissolve human flesh with their saliva, that were learning to think, to plan, to write. She returned to her motel to find a message waiting. A video file sent anonymously, the subject line reading, "You want proof? Here's proof." She opened it. The video was shaky, handheld, filmed on a boat at night. The audio was dominated by the sound of water lapping against the hull, the creak of rigging, the nervous breathing of the person holding the camera. "This is Troy," a voice said. Troy McAllister, the YouTuber, the monster hunter, the fool who'd taken the bounty and gone looking for Bessie. "We're 3 miles off Sandusky, depth reading 150 feet. Sonar's showing something massive below us, something moving." The camera panned down, showing a sonar screen. The same shape Riley had seen, serpentine, massive, gliding through the depths. "It's circling us," Troy whispered. "It's been circling for 20 minutes, like it's curious, like it's hunting." A splash off camera. The camera jerked, showing the water, the dark surface rippling with something more than wind. "What was that?" someone asked. A woman's voice, Troy's girlfriend, his assistant. "Troy, what was that?" "I don't." The boat lurched. The camera spun, showing the deck, the equipment, the terrified faces of the people aboard. Then it stabilized, pointing at the water, and Riley saw it. Ahead, massive, scaled, rising from the water like a nightmare-given form. It was serpentine, yes, but wrong, the proportions distorted, the eyes too large, too intelligent, the mouth opening to reveal rows of needle teeth and something else, something that looked almost like a tongue, but longer, more flexible, more. The tongue shot out. The camera spun again, a scream cut short, and then the boat was capsizing, the world turning upside down, the water rushing in. The final seconds of the video showed the lake from below. Dark water, shafts of moonlight and shapes. Dozens of shapes, serpentine and vast, converging on the sinking boat. The largest one, the one that had risen from the depths, opened its mouth, impossibly wide, and swallowed something. Someone. The video ended with a sound, wet, crunching, final. Riley sat in the darkening room, the video still playing on a loop, the final moments repeating over and over. She thought of Troy, of his bravado, his foolishness, his death. She thought of the creatures, of their intelligence, their patience, their hunger. And she thought of the word on her wall, welcome. They weren't just hunting, they were inviting, luring, playing with their food. The lake was dark now, the sun set, the night pressing against the windows. Riley could hear the water, always the water, lapping against the shore, whispering secrets in a language older than words. She packed her bags. She couldn't stay here, couldn't sleep in this room, not with that word on the wall, not with the memory of that scale on her pillow. She needed to move, to act, to do something before the fear paralyzed her completely. She checked into a different motel on the other side of town, as far from the water as she could get. But even there, in the landlocked room with the window facing the parking lot, she could feel it. The lake, the weight of it, the presence of something massive and patient and hungry. She dreamed of spiraling bruises, of being wrapped in coils that squeezed and squeezed, of salt water in her lungs, burning, drowning, dissolving. And she dreamed of eyes, massive ancient eyes watching her from the depths, learning her face, her name, her fear. When she woke, gasping, the sun was rising and her phone was ringing. It was Sheriff Crawford. "There's been another one," he said, his voice hollow. "A family, picnic by the shore, 3 of them dead, 1 missing." The same as before." Worse, Crawford paused. Dr. Kovacs, you need to see this. You need to see what they're becoming. She went. She didn't want to, but she went. Because she was a scientist, and scientists looked at the darkness even when they were afraid. The scene was at a state park, a stretch of beach that should have been safe, should have been innocent. Police tape cordoned off the area, keeping back the crowds of gawkers and reporters. Riley ducked under the tape, following Crawford to where the bodies lay. They were arranged. That was the first thing she noticed. Not scattered, not random, but arranged. The three bodies, mother, father, child, laid out in a spiral pattern, their arms extended toward the water, their faces turned upward, their expressions peaceful. Too peaceful. As if they died in ecstasy rather than terror. They didn't struggle, Crawford said. Witnesses say they just walked into the water together, holding hands, smiling. Hypnosis, Riley asked. Some kind of chemical. Or something else. Something that can call to us, that can make us want to come. Crawford pointed to the water's edge. Look at the tracks. She looked. In the wet sand leading from the water to the bodies and back again were marks, not footprints, something else. Something that suggested massive weight, serpentine movement, dragging across the sand. And in the center of the spiral, where the three bodies pointed, was a message. Written in the same metallic algae that coated everything now. Written in letters that were almost human, almost legible. Thank you. Riley stared at the word, at its implication, at the horror of creatures that could think, that could plan, that could express gratitude for the food that walked willingly into their mouths. They're not just hunting anymore, she whispered. They're farming. What? They're learning to make us come to them, to want to come, to choose to be eaten. Riley turned to Crawford, her face pale. Sheriff, this is worse than I thought, much worse. They're not just predators there. They're becoming shepherds, and we're the flock. The sun climbed higher, burning off the morning mist, revealing a lake that looked peaceful, beautiful, inviting. But Riley knew what lurked beneath the surface. She knew the eyes that watched from the depths. She knew the intelligence that was learning, growing, evolving. And she knew that time was running out. Chapter 4: The Breeding Ground. The Coast Guard established a quarantine zone 3 days later. Officially, it was due to toxic algae blooms and public safety concerns. Unofficially, the government had seen the footage, read the reports, and realized that something was happening in Lake Erie that defied explanation. Riley was summoned to Washington for briefings, consultations, meetings with people who wore suits and asked questions without answering any. She told them everything, the sonar contacts, the scales, the arranged bodies, the word written in algae. She showed them the video of Troy's death, the photographs of the hollowed corpses, the evidence of intelligence and intention. They listened. They took notes. They thanked her for her service and sent her back to Ohio with promises of further investigation and appropriate resources. She returned to find the lake surrounded by military vessels. Destroyers, frigates, Coast Guard cutters, a naval presence that hadn't been seen on the Great Lakes since World War II. They patrolled the quarantine zone, their sonar pinging into the depths, their weapons trained on water that seemed empty, innocent, harmless. It's a show, Crawford told her when she found him at the command center they'd established in the Sandusky Municipal Building. They're pretending to do something while they figure out what to actually do. Have they found anything? Contacts, lots of contacts, but every time they send a submersible or a diver to investigate, the contacts vanish. Like the creatures know they're being hunted, like they're playing with us. They are playing with us. Riley dropped her bag on a chair, exhausted from travel, from meetings, from the weight of knowledge that nobody wanted to believe. They're smarter than we thought, more organized. They know our technology, our tactics, our limitations. Then how do we fight them? We don't, not yet. Riley pulled out her laptop, opened the files she'd compiled. We need to understand them first. Their biology, their behavior, their weaknesses. We need to know what we're dealing with before we try to destroy it. She'd spent the flight from Washington analyzing the data, looking for patterns, for clues, for anything that might give them an advantage. And she'd found something. The scales, she said, pulling up an image. Remember the metallic content, the keratin-metal hybrid? Crawford nodded. I ran more tests. The metal isn't random, it's specific. Copper, zinc, iron, all elements that conduct electricity, and the arrangement. She zoomed in on a microscopic image. It's crystalline, structured like a circuit. A circuit for what? I think, Riley hesitated, the theory sounding insane even as she prepared to voice it. I think they use electricity, bioelectricity. The scales act as conductors, amplifying natural electrical impulses. That's how they communicate, how they coordinate, how they hunt. Electricity, Crawford repeated, like electric eels. More sophisticated, more powerful. Riley pulled up another image, a map of the lakebed showing trenches and canyons and something else. Lines. Networks of lines that connected the deepest parts of the lake in patterns that suggested design, intention, architecture. What is that? Crawford asked. I think it's their nest, their breeding ground, the place where they sleep, where they breed, where they think. Riley traced the lines with her finger. These trenches, they're not natural or not entirely natural. They've been modified, expanded, connected. The creatures have been building, Sheriff, for centuries, maybe longer. Building what? A city, Riley's voice was hushed. A city in the deep, where they live, breed, evolve, where they plan. Crawford was silent for a long moment, staring at the map. Then that's where we need to strike. The heart, the nest. We can't, it's too deep. The pressure would crush any submersible, any diver we'd need. We'd need technology that doesn't exist. Or we could lure them out. A new voice. They turned to find Eleanor Voss standing in the doorway, her face pale but determined. Bring them to us. Force them to surface. How? Riley asked. The same way they lure us. Eleanor entered the room, spreading photographs across the table. I've been studying the historical records, the patterns of disappearances, and I found something. The creatures respond to sound, specific frequencies, vibrations that travel through water. Sonar, Crawford said. We've been using sonar. Not just sonar, music, rhythm, patterns that mimic their own communication. Eleanor pulled out a document, old, fragile, written in spidery handwriting. This is from 1885, a survivor's account, a fisherman who was in a boat that was attacked. He said they sang. The creatures sang, and the song made him want to jump into the water, made him want to join them. A siren song, Riley whispered. Exactly. They use sound to communicate, to coordinate, to hunt, and if we can replicate that sound. We can call them, Riley finished, lure them to the surface, trap them. Or be devoured by them, Crawford pointed out. If this works, we're not just calling one or two, we're calling the whole colony, every creature in the lake. Then we need to be ready. Riley stood, her decision made. We need weapons, traps, contingencies. We need to turn the surface into a killing ground. They spent the next week preparing. Military engineers installed underwater speakers throughout the quarantine zone, connected to generators powerful enough to broadcast across the lake. Depth charges were positioned at strategic points, ready to be detonated if the creatures approached. Helicopters stood by, armed with torpedoes and machine guns. The surface was turned into a weapon, a trap, a battlefield. And Riley worked on the song. She analyzed the recordings from Troy's video, from the sonar contacts, from the vibrations that the creatures emitted. She found patterns, rhythms, frequencies, harmonics that suggested language, intelligence, culture. And she synthesized them, created a call that was part invitation, part challenge, part mating cry. It's ready, she said, the night before they were scheduled to broadcast. She played the recording for Crawford and Eleanor. the sound filling the command center with something that wasn't quite music, wasn't quite noise, but something in between. Something that made the hair stand up on their arms, that resonated in their chests, that made them want to go, to walk into the water, to join. "Turn it off," Crawford gasped, and Riley did, her hands shaking. "It works," she said. "It definitely works." "Then tomorrow," Eleanor said, "we find out if we're the hunters or the hunted." Chapter 5: The Feeding. They broadcast at dawn. The speakers erupted with sound, the synthesized call spreading across the lake in waves that penetrated the surface, reached into the depths, touched the creatures in their underwater city. For an hour nothing happened. The lake remained calm, peaceful, the morning mist rising from the surface in ethereal columns. The military vessels circled, their crews tense, their weapons ready, waiting for something that wouldn't come. Then the water began to move. It started at the center of the quarantine zone, a disturbance that suggested something massive rising from below. The surface rippled, then churned, then erupted as the first creature breached. It was larger than Riley had imagined, larger than the sonar had suggested. 80 feet, maybe 90, its body segmented and scaled, its head rising 20 feet above the water on a neck that seemed to have no end. Its eyes, massive, golden, intelligent, scanned the surface, the ships, the humans who had dared to call it. "My God," Crawford whispered. The creature opened its mouth, revealing rows of needle teeth and something else, a throat that seemed to glow with internal light, bioluminescent organs that pulsed in patterns that matched the broadcast, that answered the call. Then it sang. The sound was deafening, overwhelming, a frequency that bypassed the ears and spoke directly to the nervous system. Riley felt her knees weaken, felt the urge to walk to the railing, to climb over, to drop into the water where the creature waited. She gripped the metal, her knuckles white, fighting the compulsion. "Depth charges," Crawford screamed. "Now." The explosions erupted around the creature, water columns rising 50 feet into the air, the shock waves rippling across the surface. The creature shrieked, a sound like tearing metal, and dove, disappearing into the depths. "Did we get it?" someone asked. "No," Riley said, watching the sonar. "It's diving, going deep, and oh God." The screen lit up with contacts, dozens of them, hundreds, rising from the trenches, from the canyons, from the city below. The colony was answering the call, all of them, every creature in the lake. "All units open fire," Crawford's voice was desperate. "Don't let them reach the surface." The battle that followed was chaos. The creatures breached in waves, their massive bodies crashing against the ships, their tails whipping across decks, their jaws snapping at anything that moved. The military responded with everything they had: torpedoes, depth charges, machine guns, rockets. The water turned red with blood, both human and other. Riley watched from the command deck, helpless, as the creatures demonstrated their intelligence, their coordination, their learning. They avoided the depth charges, swimming around them, using them to herd the ships into clusters where they could be attacked more effectively. They targeted the weapons systems first, the engines second, leaving the ships dead in the water, easy prey. A destroyer went down, its hull breached by a creature's ramming attack, its crew spilling into the water where other creatures waited. The screams carried across the water, high and terrified, cutting off one by one as the creatures fed. "We need to stop the broadcast," Riley shouted. "It's calling more, we're attracting them from the whole lake." "If we stop, they'll retreat," Crawford argued. "We need to kill them now while we have the chance." "We can't kill them all, there are too many." She was right. The sonar showed contacts spreading across the entire quarantine zone, more creatures than they had weapons to fight, more than they had ever imagined existed. The colony was vast, ancient, numbering in the thousands. And they were learning. The creatures began to coordinate their attacks, targeting the command vessels, the communication arrays, the leaders. A helicopter was swatted from the sky, its rotor blades tangling with a creature's tail, its wreckage plunging into the water. Another creature, larger, older, scarred, breached near the command ship, its jaws unhinging like a python's, its mouth opening wide enough to swallow a car. Evasive maneuvers, Crawford screamed, but it was too late. The creature struck, its head slamming into the ship's side, its momentum carrying it up and over the railing onto the deck. It thrashed, destroying everything in its path, its tail crushing equipment, its jaws snapping at crew members who scattered in terror. Riley was thrown against a bulkhead, her head ringing, her vision blurred. She saw Crawford go down, saw his body crushed under the creature's bulk, saw the light go out of his eyes. She saw Eleanor, screaming, firing a pistol at the creature's head, the bullets bouncing off scales that were harder than steel. Then the creature turned. Its golden eyes found Riley, and she saw recognition there, intelligence, hunger, and something else, something that looked almost like gratitude. It knew her, had learned her, had been waiting for her. She scrambled back, her hands finding the emergency release for the life raft. She pulled it, felt the raft inflate, felt herself falling as the ship listed, capsized, began to sink. She hit the water, the cold shocking her system back to awareness. She climbed into the raft, paddling frantically, putting distance between herself and the sinking command ship, the feeding creature, the chaos of battle. Around her, the lake had become a charnel house. Ships burned, sank, exploded. Creatures thrashed, fed, sang their terrible songs. The water was red with blood, thick with debris, choked with the bodies of the dead. And still they came. Still they rose from the depths, answering the call, joining the feast. Riley paddled toward the shore, her arms burning, her mind numb. She expected to die, expected to feel the jaws close around her, expected to be dragged under and hollowed like the others. But the creatures ignored her. They swam past her raft, past her huddled form, their massive bodies creating waves that threatened to capsize her but never quite did. They were focused on the ships, on the soldiers, on the feast that had been laid out for them. She reached the shore, crawled onto the sand, collapsed. Behind her, the battle raged, the sounds of destruction carrying across the water. She didn't look back, couldn't look back. She lay there for hours until the sounds faded, until the lake grew quiet again. When she finally stood, turned, looked at the water, she saw an empty surface. The ships were gone. The creatures were gone. The quarantine zone was empty. Thousands dead, millions of dollars in equipment destroyed, and the creatures were still out there, still hungry, still learning. She found Eleanor on the beach, half drowned, clutching a piece of debris. The coroner was alive barely, her face pale, her eyes wide with trauma. "They knew," Eleanor whispered. "They knew we were coming, they were ready." "How?" Riley asked. "How could they know?" "Because we told them." Eleanor gestured toward the water. "Every sonar ping, every depth charge, every broadcast, we taught them. We showed them our weapons, our tactics, our weaknesses. We gave them everything they needed to defeat us." Riley thought of the song she'd created, the call that had brought the colony to the surface. Had it been her idea, or had the creatures planted it somehow in her mind? Had they used her to gather their prey in one place? "It's over," she said. "We can't fight them, not like this." "Then what do we do?" "We learn." Riley's voice was hard, determined. "We study, we find another way." But even as she spoke, she knew it was too late. The creatures had won this round. They had fed, they had learned, they had grown stronger, and they would be back. The sun set over the lake, painting the water in shades of red that looked like blood. Riley helped Eleanor to her feet, and together they walked away from the shore, away from the water, away from the creatures that ruled the depths. Behind them, something moved in the water, something massive, watching, waiting. The colony was patient. The colony had time. And the colony was always hungry. Chapter 6: The Survivors. The official story was toxic algae bloom, a natural disaster that had overwhelmed the quarantine zone, causing the loss of ships and personnel. The public bought it, barely, because the alternative was too terrible to contemplate. Riley knew the truth. Eleanor knew. A handful of survivors from the battle, scattered across hospitals and debriefing rooms, knew. But they were sworn to secrecy, threatened with prosecution if they spoke, buried under non-disclosure agreements that carried penalties of imprisonment. The government was covering it up, not because they didn't believe. They'd seen the footage, the bodies, the impossibility of what lived in Lake Erie, but because they didn't know what to do. How do you tell the public that monsters are real, that the lake they've swum in, fished in, lived beside for generations is home to creatures that think, plan, and feed on humans? You don't, you lie, you cover up, you hope the problem goes away. But the problem wasn't going away. In the weeks after the battle, the disappearances continued. Not in clusters, not in patterns that could be easily identified, but spread out, random, isolated incidents that could be explained away as drownings, accidents, suicides. A fisherman who didn't come home, a swimmer who went too far, a child who wandered into the water while parents weren't watching. The creatures were being careful now, learning from their mistakes, hunting in ways that wouldn't attract attention, wouldn't trigger another quarantine, wouldn't bring the military back to the lake. Riley tried to warn people. She wrote reports, gave interviews to journalists who were quickly silenced, posted online until her accounts were deleted and her reputation destroyed. She became a conspiracy theorist, a crank, a crazy woman who'd lost her mind after a traumatic event. Eleanor fared worse. She was found dead in her apartment, officially a suicide, her wrists slit, her body positioned in a spiral pattern that the coroner, a new coroner, not Eleanor, didn't recognize as significant. Riley attended the funeral, standing in the back, watching them lower the coffin into the ground. She knew the truth. Eleanor hadn't killed herself. She'd been taken, hollowed, her body returned as a message. A warning to Riley to stop asking questions, stop making trouble, stop trying to expose the truth. She didn't stop. She couldn't. She was the only one left who knew, the only one who could still fight. She moved to a cabin in the woods, far from the lake, far from the water. She spent her days researching, analyzing, planning. She reached out to other survivors, other witnesses, other people who'd seen things they couldn't explain. She built a network of believers, people who knew the truth and were willing to fight. But the creatures were always one step ahead. Every time she found a witness, that witness disappeared. Every time she gathered evidence, that evidence was destroyed. Every time she tried to go public, she was silenced, discredited, threatened. The creatures had infiltrated human society. She was sure of it now. They had learned to wear human faces, to speak human words, to walk on land as easily as they swam in water. The ones that had developed hands, fingers, the ability to manipulate objects, they had become something new, something that could pass for human. She saw them sometimes in crowds, in stores, in the background of news broadcasts. People who moved slightly wrong, who blinked too slowly, who smiled without reaching their eyes. The hollow people, the ones who had been taken and returned, changed, made into extensions of the colony. She learned to recognize them, learned to avoid them, learned to survive in a world that was increasingly hostile, increasingly alien, increasingly controlled by things that weren't human. Winter came, and with it, a reprieve. The creatures retreated to the depths, the cold water driving them into hibernation or torpor or whatever state they entered when the temperature dropped. The disappearances stopped. The lake froze over, solid and silent. Riley walked on the ice sometimes, venturing out from the shore, staring down at the black water below. She knew they were down there, sleeping, dreaming, waiting. She knew that when the ice melted, when the spring came, they would wake again. Hungrier, smarter, more complete. She used the winter to prepare. She built weapons, Harpoons tipped with conductive materials, explosives that could function underwater, nets strong enough to hold a whale. She trained, physically and mentally, preparing herself for the fight that was coming. And she studied. The scales, the ones she'd collected, the ones that had been her only proof. She analyzed them, broke them down, learned their secrets. The metallic content that conducted electricity, the crystalline structure that amplified it, the biological processes that created it. She found the weakness. The scales were conductive, yes. They amplified bioelectric impulses, but they also conducted external electricity. A strong enough current, properly applied, could overload their nervous systems, disrupt their coordination, maybe even kill them. She built a weapon, a spear tipped with a capacitor connected to a backpack battery. One strike, one discharge, and the creature would receive a shock powerful enough to stop a human heart. Scaled up, applied to the creature's larger nervous systems, it might be enough. It was a desperate plan, a suicide mission probably, but it was all she had. Spring came, the ice melted, the water warmed. And the creatures woke. The first disappearance was reported on March 15th, exactly 30 years after the previous cycle had begun. A fisherman, alone on the water, never returned. His boat was found drifting, empty, the equipment undisturbed. Riley knew it was starting again. The cycle, the feeding, the war between human and monster that had been fought for 10,000 years. This time she would be ready. She took her boat, a small vessel equipped with her weapon, her research, her determination, and headed for the center of the lake, for the deepest trench, for the city below. She would find them, face them, kill them, or die trying. The water was calm, deceptive, beautiful. The sun shone, the birds sang, the world seemed at peace. But Riley knew what lurked beneath. She could feel it, the weight of their attention, their intelligence, their hunger. "Come on," she screamed, her voice carrying across the water. "I'm here, come and get me." The surface rippled. Something massive moved below. And Riley raised her spear, charged her weapon, and prepared to fight the last battle. Chapter 7: The Abyss. The creature rose slowly, deliberately, its massive head breaking the surface 20 feet from Riley's boat. Water streamed from its scales, each one catching the sunlight and refracting it into rainbows that seemed obscene against the horror of what they adorned. It was the old one, the scarred one, the leader of the colony. Riley recognized it from the battle, the size, the markings, the intelligence in its golden eyes. It didn't attack. It simply watched, floating, its body submerged except for the head and the first few segments of its neck, waiting, learning, studying her as she studied it. "You know me," Riley said, her voice steady despite her fear. "You've been watching, learning." The creature didn't respond. It didn't need to. Its eyes said everything: recognition, curiosity, hunger, and something else. Something that looked almost like respect. "I'm going to kill you," Riley continued, raising her spear. "All of you, this ends now." She charged the weapon, felt the capacitor hum with stored electricity. One strike, one chance. The creature moved. Not toward her, away. It dove, its massive body creating a whirlpool that rocked her boat and disappeared into the depths. Riley waited, expecting an attack from below, from the side, from anywhere. But nothing came. The water grew calm again. The sun continued to shine. The world continued to turn. And Riley realized it was inviting her, leading her, showing her the way to the city below. "No," she whispered, "I'm not that stupid." But she was, she had to be. This was her chance, maybe her only chance to strike at the heart of the colony, to find their nest, their breeding ground, their vulnerable core. She checked her equipment, the spear, the capacitor, the backup battery, the diving gear she'd brought just in case, the explosives rigged to detonate on command. She could do this, she would do this. She anchored her boat, a futile gesture since the creatures could easily sever the line and prepared to dive. The water was cold, even in spring, cold enough to kill eventually. But she had a wetsuit, oxygen tanks, training. She could survive long enough to do what needed to be done. She entered the water feet first, the cold shocking her system, her breath catching in her throat. She descended slowly, equalizing the pressure in her ears, following the creature's trail. The light faded quickly, 10 feet, 20, 30, the sun's rays penetrating less and less, the water growing darker, colder, heavier. She turned on her dive light, a beam that cut through the murk and revealed nothing. Empty water, empty darkness. She continued down, 50 feet, 75. The pressure built, squeezing her chest, making every breath an effort. Her light revealed the lakebed below, rocky, uneven, covered in sediment. And a hole, a massive hole, a trench that descended into absolute darkness. This was it, the entrance to their city, the path to the colony's heart. She swam toward it, her light revealing the walls of the trench, not natural rock but something else. Something carved, shaped, built. The creatures had been busy. For centuries, millennia, they had been constructing, expanding, creating. She entered the trench. The walls closed around her, the darkness absolute except for her light. She descended further, following the slope, feeling the pressure increase, the temperature drop. 100 feet, 150, 200. At 200 feet, she found the first evidence of habitation. Not structures exactly, but modifications. The trench widened, opened into a cavern, and the walls were covered in growth. The metallic algae, yes, but something else. Eggs, thousands of eggs clustered in patterns that suggested organization, planning, care. The breeding ground, the nursery, the future of the colony. Riley approached slowly, her light playing across the eggs. They were massive, each one the size of a watermelon, translucent, revealing the shapes within. Embryonic creatures, curled and sleeping, waiting to be born. She could end it here. The explosives she carried, rigged properly, detonated in this enclosed space, could destroy the entire breeding ground. Kill the unborn, cripple the colony. But she hesitated. These were unborn, innocent in their way. The future of a species that had as much right to exist as humanity. And then she saw the other eggs. Not clustered on the walls. Suspended in the water, held in nets of some kind, arranged in patterns that suggested cultivation. And inside them, not serpentine embryos, but something else. Something that looked almost human. She swam closer, her light revealing the truth. The eggs contained human forms, fetuses fully developed, floating in amniotic fluid, but wrong, scaled, serpentine, hybrid. They were breeding with humans, using them, incubating their young in human wombs or artificial wombs or whatever these eggs represented. The disappearances, the hollowed bodies, they weren't just feeding, they were harvesting, collecting genetic material, combining it with their own, creating something new. Something that could walk on land, that could pass for human, that could infiltrate, replace, conquer. Riley felt sick, the nausea rising despite the pressure, the cold, the impossibility of vomiting underwater. She turned away from the eggs, searching for the source, the center, the heart of this abomination. And she found it. The cavern opened into a larger space, a cathedral of stone and water and bioluminescent light. And in the center, suspended in the water, was a creature unlike the others. It was massive, ancient. Its body was twisted, deformed, covered in growths and scars that suggested age beyond measuring. But its eyes were aware, intelligent, watching. The queen, the mother, the source of the colony. It didn't move as Riley approached. It simply watched, its golden eyes tracking her, studying her, learning her. You, Riley thought, raising her spear. You're the one, the beginning, the end. She charged forward, the capacitor humming, the spear aimed at the creature's head. One strike, one death, one chance to end this. The queen moved. Not to attack, to sing. The sound was everywhere, filling the water, filling Riley's mind, bypassing her ears and speaking directly to her consciousness. It was beautiful, terrible, overwhelming. A song of welcome, of invitation, of belonging. Join us, the song said, become us, evolve. Riley hesitated, the spear wavering. The song was so beautiful, the promise so tempting, to become something more, something eternal, something that would never die, never age, never fear. She thought of her life, her loneliness, her failures, the relationships that had ended, the dreams that had died, the future that seemed increasingly empty. The song offered an alternative, a purpose, a place in the grand design of the colony. No, she whispered, the word bubbling from her regulator. I'm human, I stay human. She struck. The spear hit home, the capacitor discharging, electricity arcing through the water, through the queen's body. The creature convulsed, shrieked, thrashed. The song cut off, replaced by pain, by anger, by the terrible realization of mortality. Riley held on, the current flowing through her as well, her body shaking, her vision blurring. She poured everything into the attack, all her strength, all her fear, all her determination. The queen thrashed, its massive body striking the cavern walls, dislodging rocks, sending shock waves through the water. The eggs, the human eggs, the serpentine eggs, began to crack, to hatch, to release their contents into the chaos. Riley saw them, the newborns, some serpentine, some human, some both, twisted combinations of the two species, neither fully one nor the other. The future, the evolution, the end of humanity as she knew it. She reached for the detonator, the explosive she'd brought, rigged to destroy everything. One press and the cavern would collapse, the breeding ground would be destroyed, the colony would be crippled, maybe killed. But she would die too. The pressure, the collapse, the depth, there was no escape. She looked at the queen, at the creature that had ruled this lake for millennia. It was dying, she could see that. The electricity had done its damage, disrupted its nervous system, stopped its heart. But its eyes were still aware, still watching, still learning. For humanity, Riley said and pressed the button. The explosion was silent underwater, a flash of light and pressure that crushed everything in its path. Riley felt herself thrown, felt her ribs crack, felt the breath forced from her lungs. She tumbled through the water, through the darkness, through the chaos of collapsing stone and dying creatures. Her light was gone. Her orientation was gone. She was tumbling, falling, sinking into the abyss. She expected to die, expected the pressure to crush her, the darkness to consume her, the cold to freeze her heart. But she didn't die. Something caught her, something massive, gentle, lifting her up through the water, carrying her toward the light. She couldn't see, couldn't think, could only feel the movement, the pressure decreasing, the temperature rising. She broke the surface, gasping, choking, her body screaming with pain. She was in her boat somehow, deposited there by whatever had saved her. She looked around, her vision clearing, and saw it. The old one, the scarred one, the leader. It floated beside her boat, its head at eye level, its golden eyes meeting hers. It didn't attack. It simply watched. Why, Riley gasped, why save me? The creature didn't answer. It couldn't answer, but its eyes spoke volumes, respect, understanding, recognition of a worthy enemy. It turned and dove, disappearing into the depths, leaving Riley alone on the water, alive, broken, victorious. She lay in the boat for hours, drifting, unable to move, barely able to breathe. Eventually, a Coast Guard vessel found her, pulled her aboard, rushed her to a hospital. She spent weeks recovering. Broken ribs, ruptured eardrums, decompression sickness, hypothermia. The doctors said she was lucky to be alive. They asked what happened. She told them the truth, or part of it. An accident, equipment failure. She was lucky to escape. They didn't believe her, but they didn't press. The official story was enough. The lake was quiet after the explosion. No more disappearances. No more sightings. The creatures had retreated deep, deep into the trenches where humans couldn't follow. Riley knew they weren't dead. The queen, perhaps, the breeding ground, certainly, but the colony survived, the old ones survived. They would rebuild, recover, return. But not in her lifetime. The explosion had set them back decades, maybe centuries. They would need time to recover, to breed, to grow strong again. Time that humanity could use to prepare, to learn, to fight. She wrote everything down. The research, the evidence, the truth. She hid copies in safe deposit boxes in encrypted servers in the hands of people she trusted. Someday, when the creatures returned, someone would find her records. Someone would know. She never went near the water again. Moved to the desert, to the mountains, anywhere far from lakes, rivers, oceans. The sight of water made her shake, made her remember, made her fear. But sometimes, at night, she dreamed of golden eyes, of a song that promised belonging, of a creature that had saved her life even as she destroyed its world. And she wondered, had she won? Or had she simply become part of something larger, something older, something that would continue long after she was gone? The lake was still there, the creatures were still there, and they were patient. They had been here before humanity. They would be here after. The only question was, what would humanity become in the time between? Epilogue: The thaw. Winter came early to Lake Erie. The water froze, solid and silent, burying the secrets of the depths beneath a blanket of ice. Beneath that ice, in the trenches that humans had never mapped, in the caverns that humans had never found, something stirred. Not the queen. She was dead, her body decaying, her song silenced forever. Not the breeding ground. It was destroyed, the eggs crushed, the hybrids killed before they could hatch. But the colony survived, the old one survived, and it was thinking, planning, learning. It had watched Riley descend, watched her attack, watched her destroy. And it had made a decision. Humanity was not prey, not anymore. They were rivals, competitors, a species that could fight back, that could kill, that could destroy. This changed everything. The old one sang, a new song, a different song, not of welcome but of warning, not of invitation but of preparation. The colony listened, the colony understood. They would rebuild, they would evolve, they would become something that could face humanity on equal terms. And when they were ready, when the ice melted, when the water warmed, when the time was right, they would emerge. Not as monsters, not as predators. As equals. The ice groaned above, the weight of winter pressing down. But beneath, in the dark, in the deep, the colony waited. Patient, hungry, evolving. And when they came again, humanity would not be ready. No one ever was. Thank you for listening to tonight's stories. If you enjoyed them, please leave a like and subscribe.